Recently, I showed you how we get water on our off-grid homestead using two really big IBC totes that are stationary right by our camper. The one thing I did not show you though is how we get water into those totes. I did say that we pumped water into the totes, but I didn't really show you where we pumped it from or how we retrieve the water from our local community center. We go through an average of 1 tote a week, and so that costs us about $4 a month in water. Now, this system really does work for anywhere that you can get water. You don't have to have a community center where you get water for very inexpensively. You could also use this if you have maybe a pond nearby that you're able to access water. It could be perhaps a creek or a local river, somewhere that you are legally allowed to get water from. You can do the same thing. We use our car, we pull the trailer to the community center with this IBC tote, and we fill it with water there. Then we bring it back home and use that whole setup I showed you before. We take water from this and we pump it into the camper. Then when that is full, we'll pump it into the other totes. It's a pretty simple setup, but the catch is what happens if you cannot afford a trailer, and what happens if you can't access maybe a big tote like this. So let me go ahead and show you what we used to do before we could afford a trailer and before we had our third tote, really before we used these totes. The only thing we had was this 35-gallon water tote. My husband used his SUV and he put this in the back of the SUV. When he came on his way back home from work, he would stop by the community water center, fill this up, and bring it back home. When he got home, he left this inside of the back of his car, hooked up a hose to this end right here, and he gravity fed it into our camper. Keep in mind, if this is something that you're interested in doing, maybe you can only afford a 35-gallon tote, which, you know, these are not inexpensive, but maybe you can only afford this, and maybe like us, you don't have a truck that you can put something big in. So maybe this will fit nicely in the back of your SUV. So keep in mind, it does spill a lot of water out if you go to a community center that you can buy water from. So the back of his car always got water spilled in the bottom of it and on the inside in the carpet. And so that leads to problems like mildew. And you're really gonna have to be diligent about drying it out completely. Also, this is only 35 gallons. So at that time, we were a family of 6. And going through the summer, there were times when we went thirsty until he got home. And really, I don't ever want to do that ever again. It's hard to be thirsty. It's hard to run out of water. And we did have the wonderful backup of a friend of mine who was nearby. And because my husband was so close to being home those times, he just came home with the water, we filtered it, and it was fine. But it still was uncomfortable. Now, not only could you potentially spill out water if this is sitting in the back of your car, it only holds 35 gallons, so you have to go consistently, especially if you have a big family. But this would also end up freezing a lot faster in colder weather. The good part about this is that it's small enough to bring it inside. So really, this is just the setup we had. It was one little tote that he put in the back of his car and gravity fed it into our camper. Water is your most important resource. It is valuable, it is necessary. Get a system going and get a second or third system. Like they say, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So go be prepared.